talk about the global cybersecurity spending, IDC predicts that it will reach $300 billion by 2026. And understandably so. The rise of digital, cloud, data, partner ecosystem, API ecosystem, supply chain, and various other technologies has made the organization increasingly penetrable. The threats are insurmountable. We are seeing them in infrastructure, applications, supply chain, identity and access, at the product level, and various areas which make security more and more complex. Now, there's so much out there, it's almost overwhelming. Sure, the security budgets and security spending is increasing, but the CISOs are under continuous pressure to prove the return on security investment. But this is where it becomes challenging. How do you prove the financial return on processes and tools that add no net new capability to your business, but only facilitate and secure your business environment? How do you arrive at a numerical value for technologies that give you more visibility into your vulnerability and attack surface before it brings your business to a screeching halt? And also, how do you bring in the value of risk probability that does not happen? These are some of the factors that make it difficult for CISOs to arrive at a ROCE and to substantiate it. Security investments manifest themselves in different forms, in the form of threat prevention, risk reduction, loss prevention, attack surface visibility and vulnerability assessment. And here with these two cybersecurity stalwarts, we'll try and understand what are some of the battle-tested strategies to arrive at a robust and substantiable ROCE, and how they're seeing the cybersecurity risk governance evolve as a proactive measure. So I'd like to start off with you, Rajesh sir. When we talk about cybersecurity, the expectations from the CISOs are in terms of managing risk, preventing risk to enable business growth. So when we talk about proactive loss, arriving at proactive loss, that is always a challenge, identifying the proactive loss and the potential loss. But as an influential negotiator in the system, how can the CISO speak the language of management in terms of the quantum of risk, business impact, loss of productivity, financial loss, revenue loss, the breakdown of infrastructure components? Because at the end of the day, the people who look at the security budget and sign the check are not technical people. So how do you speak their language to then develop a robust ROCE?
So I think CISO's roles have changed. I have been a CISO for almost 13, 14 years with larger banks and now with the capital market. CISO's role, and if I even think of prior when I entered into the cybersecurity industry, the CISO's role was typically to defend against attacks. Okay, and ensure nothing goes wrong. That's a simple statement. But today, the CISO's role are very complex. A lot of skills have been built over a period of time. They are no longer technical skills. The CISOs need to be business enablers. For them, they have to understand the business. They have to understand the risks that go with it. They have to manage their budgets. So it has to be some traits of financial management. There has to be a traits of compliance management. They have to understand the regulations. So CISO's skills have changed, and of that, one of the key skills that comes in today is a negotiator. And you use the word influential and negotiator. I will use these two as two different skills which today CISOs need. The next gen CISOs are no longer the technical gurus or technical stand gates or the toll gates that typically were believed to be. So yes, you need to be an influencer. You have to first convince the internal management, the stakeholders, the peers, because everybody looks at, boss, you are there to stop business. And that's most of my peers, friends here would understand that comes as a hurdle. So how do we make them understand that you are for them? You are not doing anything. And for a ROCE to be arrived at, the first thing which all of us admit is the resources are limited. ROCEs won't have been there. Return on security investment won't have been a relevant topic itself if we would have believed that we have infinite resources. And most of our cribs are, we don't get enough budgets. we don't get enough resources. What is it that we do to go back to the management and say, okay, you gave me these resources, this is what I have been able to do, this is what's left on the table. Moment you articulate it that way, it's understood first, oh, I gave you probably, let's say, X crores. What did you do with it? These technologies, what you build in, did it reduce the probability of your exploit? Did it bring in a deterrent? Did it defend you something? Or this is something which is still left on the table for which I need money? So numbers are important. When you're talking about business language, the business understand only numbers. And I don't want to bombard them with risk quantification, which to me, I am not a very big fan of what many of the vendor companies are posing out. Oh, if you have this much breach and this much quantum of loss, all those laws are very probabilistic, because cyber is a very integrated domain. It's not equivalent to a loss that would happen in a bank where an NPA comes in. You lent somebody something, he is not able to give you money back, you know the loss because you gave this much, this is the interest of it, and there is a quantum that you can agree on. But in case of cyber, I don't have any conviction that whatever models are being proposed, yes, you can go somewhere closer. It's more of, I always call, rather than quantifiable, I will make it qualitatively quantifiable. If you can put it in some band structure so that they can easily absorb it. But that's for my internal consumption and believe where I can. But when I talk to business, for business, I have to articulate in the risks what can go down, what can be the loss to them. For that, more important is articulation of risk. They would disagree with how you want to defend it because their business stops. But do they disagree that the risk is not there? That's the first hurdle that you have to cross. As CISOs, the first thing we have to make inclusive is, are we on the same page when we have to discuss risk? As a business owner, do they understand the risk which matter to them? If they understand compliance risk, if they understand other financial risks or people not available, do they understand cyber risk? So more and more articulation, more and more communication, more and that breaking the ice is required for establishing that connect with all the stakeholders and ensure that we have something at hand which makes it a collaborative effort and go back to the leadership. The other thing is periodically publish the updates. Whatever you have been able to do with whatever money was available, and don't take it only for money from a dollar perspective. Count the number of resources that you had. If you are able to justify these many resources, because that's again an investment. It's a quasi budget, which doesn't look in your ROCE. ROCE typically comes in, I went to CFO and asked for some money and I bought a tool. ROCE can be anything with which you have, it's a utilization of your resources which have been made available to you. Publish those dashboards, show out where things are not moving fine, what is it that you need, and insist that this goes up to the board level. More it comes as a top-down drive, the better it will work, rather than a CISO-driven objective, then it will fail. So that's how I...
Absolutely, sir. I think that was a brilliant level set and you made my job so much more easier. Some great points there when you spoke about the CISO being an influencer and being a negotiator, because security is a business mandate. The fact that you mentioned that ROCE needs to be qualitatively quantifiable is very relevant in these times of dynamic threat vectors and changing business demands. Also, you spoke about periodic updates and articulating this vision throughout the board. Now, you, sir, are now with a stock exchange. Shiv sir has had a very long-standing tenure with the stock exchange. You now represent a conglomerate which has diverse business interests across ports, power utilities, transmission, infrastructure, and also coal trading. So in your case, the security is very complex because there are a lot of variables that come into play. Internally, there's the asset inventory, cloud, identities, API ecosystem, partner ecosystem. So all of this makes it difficult to arrive at a model for ROCE. As a group CISO, how are you making sure that you arrive at a quantifiable number to make sure that at every point in time, your residual risk is less than the risk appetite of your group? And picking a thread from what Rajesh sir said, can you also talk to me about how are you talking to the executive management and not without using the approach of fear, uncertainty and doubt, and how are you sensitizing them towards the cyber risk being a business risk?
See, cybersecurity investment itself is very complex. I mean, today cybersecurity is very dynamic in nature. You know, threat vector itself is keep on changing every day. So, ROCE metric itself is become a variables, you can say. Example, if I'm going, it depends upon the, or it's varies from organization to organization, from smaller size to bigger size, or depending upon the organization. If CI is the three pillars like confidentiality, integrity, and availability, I take the example of stock exchanges, where
Availability is the key.
time, scale, accuracy is very important. Even performance is the key. We operate in that time we operate in microseconds. So availability supersedes. When availability supersedes, you have a PR, you have a DR, you have a NDR. Both the stock exchanges have their DR in their data center, their DR in data center. Fourth side, fifth side, even the cloud. So many big investment. Now you don't have an option because it's a regulatory requirement. Whenever is a regulatory requirement, ROSI metric itself will not work. So it depends upon the factors also. The investments also keep on changing it. Now coming to the big column, when you're talking about we have such a diversified business. I mean, whenever, first you need to understand the business. You do the risk assessment. You can prioritize your risk. You should know what acceptable risk or, tolerance level you can afford it. And, example, whenever we are choosing any technology per se, we choose in such a way that it should be for all business unit, not for this given business unit. So you have a standardization of the process, you have an ease of operation, and you have a complete centralized controls, and you can get the cost optimization also because of the same.
Economies of scale will come into
Yes,
play.
because of your scale and all. And you also, in the meantime, you also, choose that, given technology, if not applicable for XYZ business unit, leave it that, but at least you have a standardization technology across your all BUs. So it's all depend, I mean, and your second topic, even for the convincing to the management, you required, you need to talk on their language. Example, when it is not only increasing the business, what are the business leakages are there or revenue leakages are there, you need to understand from them. चीटी मारने के लिए हम तोप नहीं लगा सकते. I mean, if it is like an 5,000 का business है, 50,000 का system control लगा के कुछ मतलब नहीं. So once you understand from them, automatically you will come to know what kind of control is required for them. So very, very important factor is like, and you need to understand the business, risk assessment, you can prioritize your risk and accept the risk. And even convincing to the management, you have, periodic meeting with them, whenever the threat vectors are there, go and convince them, these are the threat vectors are in the market, what is the potential loss, you need to work on the matrix, what are the matrix defined on the same, and accordingly, they will also understand if you talk on their languages. That's what my submission on the same.
Absolutely. Wonderfully summed up. Now, Rajesh sir, you've had a very long-standing stint with private banks in the past, and security in banks has largely been compliance-driven. But today, cyber risk governance is more important than ever for organizations. And with the board striving to achieve cyber resilience, how do you think cyber risk governance becomes increasingly important, and how should organizations work towards it?
I think cyber governance was always there. It has just found a more structured way of driving cyber in organizations. And the primary reason, I think, what comes up is sometime the ownership issues, who will be driving, to what level it will be driven, and the learnings from there. Typically, CISOs were looked at one-man army to implement the cyber security in organizations. I think all of us would believe and agree that anything potentially going wrong or anything happening in the organization, the first neck to catch is CISO.
That's where the buck stops.
Right? That's where buck stops. But buck starts where? Let's catch that person as well. I'm sorry if there are any CIO friends here, I'm not trying to attribute it to them. But I'm just trying to say is, guys, CISO is the guy who is a policy maker. He tells what is the right way to do a particular thing. The guy is doing on ground. What is the support he gets from the top? What are the driving ecosystem that he is able to create? Everything matters. Otherwise, CISO alone fighting a battle is bound to fail. So cyber governance gave that structure. And the people working in banks are very well aware. RBI has recently issued a master direction on governance, just to ensure that the responsibilities are clearly laid out. Things are not being looked at who will be doing what, right? So I think cyber governance is an important, it's not a new addition, but it's an important way of restructuring the cyber risk management was happening in organizations. wherein it makes board accountable for a lot of stuff. Because they also now understand, board as well as the regulations, as well as all the stakeholders, policy makers in the country, they very well understand that it cannot happen till it's driven from the top. We all read bottoms up security, top down security. Bottom up security is only for good for ideas. You should definitely go for bottoms up, reach out everyone, take the ideas, how to be done. What needs to be done, it should come from the top. And cyber governance is one which can actually establish that framework where board becomes accountable for doing things. They get authorized and they authorize the respective, either it's the management or it's the CISO or it's the CIO or it's compliance. What are their responsibilities, documenting it very clearly and making each one of them answerable for that. And not only the regulators, one key addition, if you guys would have noticed, I think most of us are a fan of NIST framework, right? We have always been adapting NIST framework for all those 5 pillars that existed. Many of you would know that's now changed to 6 pillars. The 6th pillar that has come in is nothing but governance. So they have picked up elements from identify, again reiterating that cyber governance is not a new animal here. It has been existing, but it only needs to be emphasized more. So they picked up a lot of identification items, policy making items, risk appetite items, and also how a ROCE should be driven, how your investment should be, who should be driving it, who should be checking it, how much budget, how much risk tolerance you have. Everything goes back into the governance layer. So the 6th pillar, which actually is the first pillar as part of the NIST new version 2 framework, is a cyber governance angle. So it's something which was due, it was already there, but now calling it out separately is to just ensure that we have a mathematical model which is more structured, which actually demonstrate our ability to deliver cyber security in a particular way and is repeatable, rather than what it was in an ad hoc way that was working out.
Right, absolutely. So very salient points and very wonderfully articulated. Shiv sir, can you offer some hard and fast do's and don'ts to the fellow CISOs on arriving at a ROCE? Can you share any of the interesting anecdotes or experiences from your previous organization that you would want to talk about, that they could relate to?
I'll give one example, like when I was working with the NPCI, so one of the big bank, there's some regulatory non-compliance where we are talking about, they have more than 2 lakhs ATMs, and they are non-compliant because those softwares are Windows 95 and Windows 2000, and we are forcing them to comply them. Then they discuss, boss, replacing, the software itself is costing 500 crore rupees. And every day loss, if you talk about every year loss, that too also is not for ATM fraud, is not more than 5 crore rupees. So we are okay, we are ready to accept this risk, but we are not going to be changed. That too also ATM's technology itself is dying. So it's all about when we are talking about cyber security, cyber security is for the business. Business is not for the cyber security.
Correct.
So that's very important when you talk about do's and don'ts. We should understand the business first, and even when you talk about the ROCE metric itself, it will not work when the regulatory compliance come into the pictures. That is the cost of business. You need to be compliant for the same. And don'ts you cannot replicate the same thing, for the other organization to your organization, because every organization is unique in nature and depending upon their requirement and all. And only thing I can say, whenever you want to do, and first understand the business, do the risk assessment, prioritize your risk, accept your residual risk or the tolerance value, and then only you can design, define and design your cybersecurity framework. That's what I can say.
Right, absolutely. Now, since both of you have, raised this point and it resonates with both of you, I'm sure with some of the CISOs in the audience as well, I'd like to close this session with a wrap-up round of question. Rajesh sir, are ROCE frameworks defendable outside the boundaries of the enterprise, not just with the CFO and the board, but also with regulators?
No. No, I admit that. Have worked in the regulated sector for almost larger part of my career. All these ROCE models, yes, cost benefit analysis is required, wherein you can go and request back to the regulator, boss, this is how the cost benefit matrix looks like. Law of land and the regulations, they prevail everything else. You have to ask them to change the regulations, otherwise your license is at stake. So all that models that we talk of is good within the enterprise boundaries, just to justify to the CFO, boss, तूने मेरे को पैसा दिया था, मैंने ये कर दिया है.
So
Right?
Rosi,
So I think in simple, we are already over time, so I think that's what I want to give out back to the team, and maybe Shiv can add.
and I'm agree with this. You know, see, ROSI metrics is very good for your internal budget, for your CFO, or for your top management. But once you go to the regulator, this is a risk. They don't want to. ROSI metrics, keep it with you. We want this has to be compliance. That's it.
Thank you so much, Rajesh sir and Shiv sir. I think you brought about some very actionable insights and practical examples of how to arrive and substantiate your ROSI. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, can I have a resounding round of applause for the collective experience and industry expertise on stage with me? Thank you so much, gentlemen.